welcome to No Question About That. I'm Ed, today with Wayne to discuss United's defeat again to Wolverhampton Wanderers. Somehow, Wayne, we appear to be both unlucky and absolutely shockingly bad. Most of the second, a little bit of the first. How are you feeling? We're just after the whistle. That was really bad.
Yeah, I am thoroughly miserable. You know when they say there's that stupid joke, they say that the strongest team in the league is the one that's at the bottom because they're holding everyone else up. We laugh. United are the most benevolent team this Christmas because they're giving gifts everywhere. I mean,
my God.
What professional football team, and I don't know, I consider myself one, Elevastato. What professional football team concedes 2 goals direct from a corner in the space of a week? It's unfathomable how bad we've been. It's really bad.
It's a great stat. I haven't seen anybody on the internet come up with an answer to that one. The last time that happened, I mean, you see clips on socials of people either doing it as a trick on the training field, or some ridiculous Sunday league. That wouldn't have looked out of place in the Sunday league, either that one or the one against Spurs, other than there's a stadium and a bunch of people. It's really, really bad. At the same time, I mean, since we're going right into the details, because I suspect we'll talk about the game a little bit, and quite a lot of the details, and then quite a lot of the macro picture.
Yeah.
At the same time, I feel United were a bit unlucky. And that is not to say that is why we lost. We lost because we were really bad. We were really bad in that game. The approach, tactics, and strategy aren't working yet. I say yet in hope rather than definite expectation. I think there's a direction of travel, but I'm not sure. But the unluckiness comes in that the PGMOL, after Arsenal were crowding keepers last season, basically ruled that out and said you cannot obstruct a keeper and that will be a foul every time. And we've had 2 instances in a week in which there are fouls on the keeper, right? Now, you can say also at the same time that Bayindir last week and Onana this week should be way, way stronger. And there's just absolutely there's a League 2 keeper should not concede that at all, right? Got to be stronger. You have the advantage of arms, which in most cases are quite long for goalkeepers, and you should never concede that. And then the second unlucky thing is Bruno. Well, I mean, sometimes refs would give those both as yellows.
Yeah.
Right. I think the first one is extremely marginal.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I wouldn't give it. Not that I'm a qualified ref, so my view is worth absolutely fuck all, as in most things about football. I don't claim expertise, but I thought that was very marginal.
What you qualify as a qualified ref. Do you know what I mean? I don't think you're that far off, to be honest, Ed.
Yeah, maybe I should. I don't know. Am I aged out? How what's the ceiling on being a Premier League ref?
I don't know about that. I mean, I think you've probably got a better understanding of the general rules than many of them, which is.
Follow their own. They just need to follow their own rules. The Bruno one, there's no way of kind of checking that. VAR won't check a yellow card, and of course, it's kind of subjective. Was there a foul there? And how serious was it? The first one is extremely soft, and the second one is kind of dumb on his part because don't make the tackle. No, absolutely no need, but there's barely any contact at all, if any. It's just there's like not much there at all. So I feel like United unlucky in the details, but in the bigger picture, just absolutely dreadful in this game. I mean, Bruno was off it before he got sent off anyway.
Yeah,
just didn't appear to be working for him. And he's not doing the thing that I think we need him to do in that position, which is a question, isn't it?
Yep.
And the rest of the team just didn't seem to work. Colby had a second mediocre game in a row. Not going to freak out about that, but it wasn't awesome.
No.
And none of our other forwards did much either. Højlund spent most of the game moaning.
Yeah, and everything was wrong, really, from the start. I mean, the thing is, what's most concerning about this is that Amorim has been saying that this team's strong close to his strongest choice from the selection he's got available.
He said, he was asked and said,
And they were thoroughly outplayed against Bournemouth and outplayed again tonight by a team who've only won once at home in the league and have been utterly abysmal to the point where they've had to change the manager. You can't watch something like that and not be concerned. You can't put it down to newness. I mean, there's so many things. First of all, the system that's set up as a 3-4-2-1 or 3-4-3, which in effect plays like a 5-2-2-1 sometimes. And tonight, when Bruno was sent off, it was playing as a 5-3-1, which was very difficult. So it wasn't never ever going to get us back into the game. So the late changes that were made, which effectively, brought some chances later on with Casemiro, Eriksen, and Anthony. I mean, I'm not going to be claiming to be any tactical mastermind, much as you're not claiming to be a good referee. But I think we've all been seeing that the most beneficial avenue of chance creation is probably going to come from Anthony and Ahmad doubling up on that right-hand side. But the problem when you're playing the system with the players that he has been playing in the selection that we've got is that it falls naturally into a 5-man defence. So when a team is playing high aggressive football or pitting players high, you're too far back to control the ball. You can't break in the way that you want to break under that system. There's nothing there. I mean, really, the concerning thing is on a very basic level, before the red card, but definitely afterwards, it wasn't a system. It looked like it had already been figured out, the system.
Yeah.
Which is a big worry. And then afterwards, he's kind of making the reactive changes to try and galvanise something. But the point is that the plan doesn't look effective with the strongest selection. And that's where the alarm bells ring. And now I tweeted after the game against Bournemouth that I was concerned by this because there was a generationally bad performance. The type which would be a generationally bad, but we've seen 5-7 a season from United, which even them maybe being generous. These are really bad performances, really concerning performances. I'm not a supporter who will advocate for change or get against a new manager. But it's concerning because the fix, I know you want to talk about the game, but I just want to, this is obviously we're talking half an hour after the final whistle, and I just want to vent a little bit. The most obvious change that can be seen as a benefit in the next sort of 6 weeks, or let's say 8 months, is an influx of players that can play this system better. So let's say 5 or 6. There's still no guarantee that works. So let's say that you get all these players in to fit this manager's system. The next manager will come in. He's not going to fit this system. He's most likely not going to play 3-4-3. And we're in exactly the same position as we have been, but probably even more disjointed because of there are bigger picture things at the moment, like how to worry about the players that we've got. Cobby for me is the prime example because I don't think that this system is suiting him at the moment. I think the 3-man midfield really helps him, and he's been asked to do too much at this moment in time, too much too young. And there also we've said this before, the differing profiles of all of the individual players, which makes every single change. The biggest problem United have got at the moment, and there are many, but the biggest problem that they've got is that they've got a goalkeeper who thinks that fans have paid to watch him play football, so he takes too much time on the ball. And we've got a centre-half who thinks fans have paid to watch him play football, so he takes too much time on the ball. And I'm saying that that's as kind as I can be without being critical about the goals that we've conceded. But everyone can see that there's a massive problem with the amount of time that Onana takes and the amount of time that Maguire takes. The value of any effective system is its ability to catch an opponent off guard. The ability to be able to do that is quicker build-up and quicker decisions. All of that impetus is always taken out of United straight away, immediately in the build-up. And that has been the biggest issue in the last 2 games.
Yeah, all right. There are a few things there to unpack, quite a few. I don't think we need to get ahead of ourselves and talk about who the next coach is after Amorim.
No,
but
of course,
I get your point. Like, more generally, the club structure and the sporting director, if there was one, is there to ensure some kind of continuity across coaches, and that's and in development of the squad and stuff like that. And we don't have that at the moment. It'll be interesting to see whether they do that. But right now, there's a short-term problem, which is how they go from being really, really bad to a bit less bad than that, and somehow move up the table and succeed in the competitions we're still in without completely collapsing this season. Because as much as Ruben Amorim will get as much time as is necessary in a very large amount of time and money and all of that kind of stuff, he you simply cannot lose 60% of your games as a Manchester United coach and not be under desperate pressure. I'm not saying that's coming right now, but it will be at some point. On the team, I mean, you mentioned quite a few players and the structure and who suits what. I think at least two of the midfield four, so the 4 in the 3-4-3, will be changed, and those are the two wing backs. I, like you, do not like Dalot and Mazraoui as the two wing backs in any context, let alone against one of the worst teams in the league. I think it causes two problems. One, on the left-hand side, Dalot, he's not going to go wide and create that extra man, right? So, which is, if you look at the sporting systems, they're able to create overloads with one of the wide 10s and the wing back all the time, right?
Yeah.
And have a lot of cutback goals as a result. United are not going to do that. Dalot does not provide that from that position. Mazraoui just doesn't have the kind of physicality. Very interesting and intelligent footballer, Mazraoui. I don't think that's a position that particularly suits him, honestly. So I think United are a bit weaker there. And then the third of potentially three changes is Kobbie Mainoo, who's going to need to be more progressive with the ball. I've said this over and over again. And there's been more talk from some of the tacticos about that now. Some good breakdowns. He is not going to last in this system if he's just one more pivot making a lot of interceptions. That's great, but we need to be able to move the ball out of that middle third into the final third, and we can't do that with that 4-man midfield. Not just his problem, but it's one thing that has to happen. So You've definitely got that problem. At the back, I mean, you're right about the slow build-up. The outlier, the wide of the three are the two that typically make the most progressive passes in the Amorim system. It's not the middle centre back, but it's very, very skewed to Martinez at the moment because he's the best passer of the three, and he's been in a bit of a funk. Perhaps only had one good game this season, which was against Manchester City, fortunately, but he makes a lot more passes than any of the others. And he makes them more quickly. Maguire makes passes, but he makes them very slowly, and Lenny Yoro is still finding his feet at the club. So there's problems there. And you move forward, and you just don't see where the goals are coming from. I mean, I know Amaz had a really good season, but he's got, 4 goals in 20 games or something like that. He's not a big scorer, never has been. He's a good creator. Bruno isn't scoring. He's still trying to work out what kind of role he has in this team. People will be very frustrated with him after this, and there'll be a lot of nonsense talked about online, but you can ignore most of it. He's the ultimate creator, right? He literally creates more than anyone else in football in any league anywhere. And so you want him doing that, but he's often in the wrong position in this system. That's where the foul came from, the second foul, right? And then Højlund, incredibly raw and just not scoring enough goals, not getting in the right positions, not getting the ball enough, moaning at his colleagues all the time, like constantly. It's not a good look, honestly. And then Xerxes, who's just not a striker. Fight me if you want to argue with that. Anyway, I've just picked apart the entire team there and ranted about them. So sorry, hand it over to you.
No, I'm just going to pick up with the others. I feel like being very harsh, but like Garnacho doesn't suit that system. Well, I mean, he's got the abilities to play in the system, let's say, but the way that he has played when he's been in the United side so far, you're going to need a different skill set to benefit from that system.
Yeah, for sure.
Højlund, where we saw the progression of him under Ten Hag, I do think we did see that. I feel like it's probably stepped back a little bit while he's learning to play in this system, and he just doesn't have. You mentioned earlier about, and I feel like we're on like a slightly different side of the coin. Let's say the middle of the coin's there, and you're on this side, and I'm on this side, and this coin is the physical strength of the players and how necessary it is. I feel maybe I've been a little bit too harsh. You mentioned there was a goal that we conceded against Arsenal where Højlund was objectively fouled in the build-up for that. And I said afterwards, when we were talking about it, that I felt like he was probably a bit weak because he'd done something earlier in the build-up, typical of him, where he'd sort of like gone for a 50-50 and he was way too weak on it, on the ball. And then again, this is what I'm thinking about the goalkeepers, is that, yeah, all right, you can say that there's contact there, there's a challenge made, but it's also not a non-contact game. That's kind of where our goalkeepers are towing the line a little bit, saying like, well, we've been told that it's no contact, but we play like that. All of our players play like that. All of them, the way, and I don't like saying soft, but we go looking for the easy way out all the time. They go looking for the foul, and really now we are playing in a climate where fouls, you pull back for a foul now. You know what I mean? If a big decision, they'll always pull back for it. So you don't have to exaggerate most of the time. And in the 50-50s, if you show yourself to be weak in possession, the referee is going to analyse that as part of his coverage of a game to think that player is generally weak. So if they miss that challenge or they miss this or that challenge, if it is involved in a crucial decision, it is going to go against you. I'm saying that about the decisions.
Except if it's an honor.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
But sorry, just to finish the point on that, I'm saying that about the decisions, but in the general run of play where you're not looking for decisions and you are looking for your inner strength, for your inner self to be able to influence the game, Højlund is just way off it at the moment. Xerxes further off it. He influences games in a different way, sometimes positively for United, in a way that Højlund doesn't. But the alarming lack of presence that United have got there at centre forward is just one of the many issues that we've got at the moment.
All over the pitch, actually. It's not a very physical side, not a very big side. I'm sure they'll look for some physicality when they think about those wing-back positions and central midfield. Yeah. It is a small, fairly weak side. The Onana one, I'm just trying to... Like, as I said, I thought he needs to be stronger for sure, but I'm just trying to work out what context anywhere else on the pitch that's okay. Like one player standing in front of him, one player pushing from behind, right? He physically touched him when the ball's not there. He wasn't challenging for the ball. He physically pushed him with a forearm rather than two hands. But I'm just like, almost anywhere that's probably going to be a foul. So I was kind of surprised, right? It's the high bar. Ref didn't call it. VAR's not going to change it. So I'm going to give him some benefit of the doubt there. Not much, honestly, but some. Before I get 1,000 YouTube comments with, some snarky reply.
No, but this is what I mean. Like, I'm being a little bit harsh on them, but harsh in the context of all over the pitch, we're just not strong enough. And they're not giving the referee an excuse to disallow it. Really, they're being too soft in the general play, looking for things that aren't fouls elsewhere on the pitch. So in the critical moments where they look softer, I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you. That there's a fair chance that in any other United just had rotten luck with that kind of statistic of two corners going straight in. But really, there are so many things that go wrong for a corner to fly straight in. The only anecdote, and I was trying to think of this, the only story that I've got that relates to two things like this in United's entire history is when George Best scored direct from a corner against Ipswich. This is so how long ago that was. And Bobby Robson, I think, was manager of Ipswich at the time. It might not have been Bobby Robson. That seems quite early for Bobby Robson. The Ipswich manager at the time complained.
Ron Greenwood?
It could have been. I'm going to say early 70s or late 60s. It was definitely after the European Cup. Anyway, so he scored out from a corner. The Ipswich manager had said, I don't think he meant to do it. So a few weeks later, United played Ipswich in the League Cup. They actually played them back to twice at Portman Road, I think it was. Anyway, twice in a couple of weeks they played him. And then he went to score direct from a corner again, but it hit the post. And Best ran up to the manager, kind of like going, showing you that I meant to do it. But that's the only time in United history. And I'm trying to think of something positive to add in, and I'd have to go back 50 odd years for it, Ed. It is bizarre enough to write off as a coincidence, to not write off goalkeepers critically in that kind of way. I just think it's indicative of a general malaise in the team performance as well. And
yeah, and we have to turn that around quickly, because I think, again, like, not advocating for any change or anything like that, like, just to be clear before anyone misunderstands, but people will lose faith.
Yeah.
Like, that's 6 defeats now under Amorim, isn't it? I think it's 6. Maybe it's even more. I'm forgetting now, but I think it's 6. 5 in December. We've got Newcastle coming up on the 30th, and they are playing all right at the moment, right? You definitely can't say that that's a gimme for United, right? So it could be a record-breaking number of defeats in December. So people will start to lose faith. And we've probably got one of the world's, statistically, we've got one of the world's most overperforming coaches, right? Over and above budget and spend in terms of what he achieved, all at Sporting. So we've got a great young manager, he's a good communicator, he's got a real clear vision about what he wants, but it's going painfully wrong right at the moment. He said a storm is coming, so I guess we have to say this is the storm, but it can't be that bad. Otherwise, also, people will start to go, what's going on? And we'll get in a situation where Sir Jim appoints himself as manager.
Well, yeah, the old Chelsea thing with Abramovich. So this is my sort of element of concern with this. First of all, that we had a manager who he was given the benefit of the doubt because of the fact that they were taking over and there was a bad run of form, so they give him the benefit of doubt there. When they backed him with a lot of new coaches, we were supposed to invest our faith in that. And then within 3 months, all those coaches are gone, and we've got a radically new system which we're all supposed to have faith in as well.
Yeah.
And I really am not advocating for change. I just think that they're now also having the same noises of, well, this manager's got to work with what he's got, mostly in January because of the problems of the previous things. You said there, and I know that you said it, a storm is coming. Was a storm really necessary? I don't think we were that bad. To say that where we are in the league, and it was said to me on Twitter, and it always gets said around this time of year, or whenever United have a bad run of form, because I wrote the book Too Good to Go Down, everyone's like, oh, United too good to go down. It always gets asked. But this is the first time I've looked at that, and I think, not that say we will go down, I think we are, there are worse teams in a poor league than us. But we were comprehensively beaten by Wolves tonight. And I know you might look at that and say, all right, well, a freakish goal and then a late second. But we were comprehensively beaten. We can't have any complaints about that result at all. And then you look at Newcastle and you look at the next game, which is at Liverpool, and I'm with you that the change had to come with Ten Hag, much as I am with Solskjaer, really. But I just don't think it was that bad to suggest that these kind of performances are acceptable. I think it's a really...
but what you're saying there is, just to clarify, that it wasn't so bad that we had to get even worse to get better later, right? Or
exactly,
is that what you're saying? Yeah, look, I cannot find a single reason to have not fired Ten Hag, right? Not a single one. Other than you can go, well, it could get worse. I suppose that's some kind of argument. But but it should have happened in the summer. And I think that was in retrospect, a shockingly awful management decision. Why do companies fail, right? They use their resources badly. They make bad decisions as an executive team. And United managed to do that very badly in the summer. They spent a lot of money for Ten Hag, for his system. Ruben Amorim comes in after spending £10.4 million to get rid of Ten Hag and another 11 million euros to get Amorim in, while colleagues at United are getting fired and bonuses are not getting paid, and the Christmas party was cancelled, and Sir Jim had turned into the mayor of Nottingham and all of that. So it's like coming to this environment where everything is going wrong, and Amorim says, yeah, well, we've got to change it all around. Now, I have sympathy for him because I'm not sure what benefit there would have been to him to go. Like, once you've said, hey, we're bringing in this manager and he has a certain kind of system, if he had just deployed the old system, 4-2-3-1, and played counter-attacking football, which this team has been best at for the last 6 years, since Solskjaer was appointed, at some point he's going to, would we say, well, yeah, we're writing off the rest of the season, we're going to play this old system, and then in the summer, he's going to flip over to his new system. I'm not sure that made sense either. You can go way back and again, look at the roots of the problems with United, the club, and United, the team. The most recent really bad management decision was not firing Ten Hag in the summer, giving him another few months and £200 million on a bunch of players that may or may not fit into this system. Ugarte, definitely. The rest of them, we're kind of working that one out, right? Mazraoui we like, but I'm not sure wing back is his thing. De Ligt, yeah, all right. Is he an upgrade on Maguire? Maybe, marginal. Yoro, we hope he's a good player and all of that, right? So I know I'm kind of rambling about it, but you can kind of look at these signposts along the way or markers on the road of where United have gone wrong. And unfortunately, each marker, there's been more bad decisions than good ones. And it has to start turning around because it gets more and more difficult from here. Given that, look at the league table, the probability is we're not qualifying for European football unless we win the Europa League. Who's going to make a bet on that? Honestly, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So United will be £100 million off the Champions League qualifiers, or anyone who does well. That starts to become a really significant gap between United and the rest of the top teams, the big six. And it becomes harder and harder and harder to get back to where we want to be.
But in betting, it was George Best scored from a corner 50 years ago. Okay. And this
He'd
is
get in
where
the team today, wouldn't he?
Yeah. I'm not. I think that's my biggest worry is that I don't see the results as the storm. I see the potential investment, lack of investment in January as a big issue because going on with this squad, with this manager, obviously the manager, but going on with the squad, persisting with the system, I can't see a way that it works because the evidence is cataclysmic, and I hesitate to use big scary words, but it is because the results are so bad and the performances are so bad. They're as bad as anything that we've seen in Premier League history for a Manchester United side, and they've come too early on in this management era from a manager who warned us that it was possible that it was going to happen. They're getting worse the closer he gets to his desired selection as well. So what does that tell us? It tells us that he is not familiar with the restriction in ability of these players to play at this level.
Yeah.
We are.
I know for sure, but whatever analysis you want to put on these players, and there's a lot of players that in many, many United eras would have been nowhere near this squad, obviously. They are not the 14th worst team in this division. They're just not. They're just not. Like, these are, like, from Onana through to the strikers, these are players that have achieved much elsewhere, and sometimes at United.
I'm with you, but this is what I'm saying. With like 18 months ago, we were qualifying for the Champions League, so there's on the basis of, like, you look at the quality of them as individual players, but then our issue with them has always been, are they players who find excuses collectively? It's very difficult to level that when there's so much turnover in a squad, because then you start saying you give players a chance, don't you? And then really, and I feel irresponsible in some regard, that we're a voice box in terms of, like, or an echo chamber, that, like, people will listen to us and think that our opinions are reflective of a greater percentage. In as much as we will dig out familiar culprits like Maguire, like I just have done, and I feel guilty for doing that, because, like I've said before on this podcast, that there's a point where it comes where you stop criticising the player, because it doesn't do anyone any good to keep pointing out a player's not good enough. Because really, it's not a criticism for Manchester United for a player, really, because what you want to be saying is it's a good thing when a player does well. It's a big stage to fail on.
Sure. I mean, I do agree with you, and I think I'd like to think that we offer, generally speaking, on the podcast, and you especially offer a pretty nuanced opinion on players, and it's just fans offering an opinion. I think there's a very, very big difference between that and the kind of systemic abuse that players get online. If you believe the internet, Onana, Maguire, Martinez, Dalot, Mainu, Højlund, Xerxes, and Bruno should all be binned off, right? And there's probably a bunch of others that I haven't listed there because they're all shit, and we'll drive them to the airport to go to whatever team they're fucking off to, and then we'll magically find on some fucking money tree all the money that will magically bring in all these new players that, like, they would do in Football Manager with a cheat mode on or whatever, right? So, like, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. Amorim and the exec team are going to have to work out who can fit into his system, because they're going to give it the time, right? And who are the players that are going to work, and what kind of trading they can do. And let's be realistic, at best they'll make 4 or 5 new signings in this cycle, and they will know much more than we will do, because honestly we don't see most of the costs broken down, like what the FFP position is and what they can actually do as a business. I did see a Swedish Rumble did a thread yesterday, I guess it was Christmas, like guesstimating what United could spend. And in one sense, yes, you could, given you break down the costs over a 5-year period, spend a huge amount of money in theory, but you wouldn't be able to spend anything for the next 3 years after that, right? And if you get it wrong, good night, right? So we are seeing the result here of horrendous recruitment. Like, there's a bunch of other mistakes, but that is one of the really bad ones. Over and over again, you get a very small percentage of these right. Now, the recruitment they made in the summer may or may not work out. We're hoping they do. It's like fingers crossed. The recruitment under Ten Hag was almost universally bad. I mean, I hope some of them come good. So far not. But it leads to, sorry, just I'll round it out, like 5 more seconds. So 331 million owed. Like, add whatever you want to spend on top of that, and the very little money you'll get for players who are underperforming when you try and ship them out on massive contracts, and you've got a fucking shitstorm. And that's very, very, very hard to get out of. We could do with a under-18s miracle, is what we could do, a la Barcelona.
The 3 or 4 players, the first 3 or 4 players that he brings in have got to be so critically important to the improvement of that system.
God, yeah.
So there is that. Then, while I am using words like cataclysmic, I do also want to try and put a positive perspective in there, in that we all like to go back to the early Fergie era. So when it was darkest before the dawn in 89, 90, we had... So let's go through some of that squad very quickly. The bones of that squad who were there 3 years later when we won the league, 4 years later when we won the league were. So you've got Bruce Pallister, Phelan.
89. Yeah.
Yeah. Bruce Pallister, Phelan,
Ince,
McClare, Robson, McClare, Hughes. So you've got a very good sort of percentage of that squad in there. So that's not. That gives me the point I'm making is that you said there it's not so bad a squad that you should be looking at 14th or 15th. My initial response to that, in the wake of being very, very grumpy after losing the way that we have done in the last 2 league games, and really last 3 league games, I should say, 'cause we forget the Forest game. Forest game was after City, wasn't it? So it's the last 3 league. Is it last 3 league games we lost? Was Forest before City?
Yeah.
No,
Forest.
it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was City, Forest. So it's the last 3 league games and
the cup game.
So 4 games we've lost in a row. Europe, we might have won the European game. Anyway, we've lost a few games in a row, and I'm grumpy about it. And I look at that and I say, no, we are 14th in the table. That's how good we are at the moment. That would be my initial response to that, because there's no evidence. There's declining evidence to suggest otherwise. And when you see the players like tonight, because at some point the penny has to drop, right? You have to be looking for the green shoots. And the green shoot isn't, unfortunately, Ahmad playing well, because like tonight, he'll just be the shining light, and then you just go, well, a team will mark him out of it. And then the other players just are not doing enough. So I think that's probably the right way of saying it. Not like say they're not putting in the effort or they're not good enough. They're just not doing enough, because the evidence is there, right?
Sure,
You cannot. It's like we've said before, like about they're not good enough to win a league title because the evidence is there. They haven't done it, so they're not winning games of football, and they're not deserving to win games of football. They didn't deserve to win against Nottingham Forest. They didn't deserve to win against Bournemouth. They didn't deserve to win tonight. We deserved exactly what we've got against teams that we should have been expecting to defeat fairly comfortably, and those players are the ones who've got to look at themselves, right? So it's not the manager at this moment in time. It will be the manager in 5 or 6 weeks. The problem is why everything feels like it's come to a head right now is because there were a number of massive decisions that have been made by the ownership. They've affected the entire structure of the club. So when they do that and they speak with such authority in their direction of travel, which we've spoken about often on the last few pods, is you have to be seeing indication of progress, and there just isn't any. Unfortunately,
but that's, when I say it cannot be the case that we lose 60% of our games as a Manchester United manager. That's what I'm talking about, right? And I'm not saying, as you know, just to repeat, I'm not saying, hey, we should get a P45 out. Right? I'm saying the pressure builds and builds and builds. It'll build up on the manager. It'll build up on the players, although unfortunately they are the least accountable because they all have contracts. And that has been a perennial problem at Manchester United. He's going to build up on the new ownership who've taken almost complete control of the club, from CEO, like CFO, recruitment, technical, sporting director when he was here. Yeah, complete control Ineos team have now, and will have complete ownership between 18 months and 3 years per the sales agreement, I bet. But the pressure is on them, right? You already see like people complaining and moaning about the ownership, and I think it's all right to go. In fact, actually, I'm much more comfortable with pointing at like ownership and executives and going, you've made some bad decisions there. And I think it's okay to say bad decisions, and it's all right to say bad performance from players. What it's not all right to say is, pick the phrases you want that get used all the time, right? And do seep into the consciousness of both the execs to a lesser extent, but especially the players. We know they're too online, right? So this all has an effect. And unfortunately, like, there's nothing that's going to stop that. And we talked on the last pod when we did the review of Ineos's 1 year at United, that like the microscope is there. Billion supporters or whatever you want to pretend there are of Manchester United, huge amounts of pressure, the story all of the time. The the absolute focus. Ruben Amorim already like getting used to doing 4 interviews a day, at least, and huge pressure on him. Yeah, he's already made some big calls, dropping Garnacho, completely binning off Rashford. We're not really sure what the inside track is on that, So like he's making big decisions, but it's got to start going right at some point.
Well, because obviously we've gone way bigger picture with that, so let me pull it back on point, which is very rare for me to do. I usually run away far in the other direction.
In 1931, United, no.
I could. Now, considering what he has said about this being closer to his first choice team, considering how far we've turned in terms of performance, do you think he's going to reanalyze that? He's obviously got to change it for Newcastle because Bruno is going to be out. So
yeah.
So you would suspect Garnacho will start there. Whether or not there's some kind of different directive how to get the best out of him, whether or not there's different in terms of getting Rashford back in the squad, because these are all now sort of consequential decisions of what's happened with Bruno today. So what does he do now? Does he go like, this was the team? Do I double down and say, once Bruno's back, I'm still going to persist with these players in this team until he gets right? Or is he just going to have to sort of take a step back and say, it didn't work?
I don't think, look, Ten Hag was ruined the moment he dropped his philosophy and picked another one up. Right, ruined. He was goner at that.
I don't mean philosophy. Yeah. I mean, like, by all means, go with the system, but like the selection.
No. I don't even mean just the system. We're going to get 3-4-3. That's a given. That's a picture. He's very confident about. That's what he's going to do, and I do kind of agree with that because he just flip flops on that. He's never going to get. He's going to be starting afresh every single time he flip flops, and that's where Ten Hag had a problem. No. I mean, just like his philosophy in terms of the principles of play, which he talks about as the guiding light. And that's much more important than when you have a 3-pass move, which player is in zone 14 or are on the inside or the outside of the fullback, and is where do you have your overloads and at what point you get switch play and all the kind of technical stuff, right? So the principles of play, right? He's got to stick to that. That's the most important thing. He can swap players in and out. The squad is his squad. If they pick up a left back, which I don't know about you, but I'd heard from a few people that they might be close to doing a deal on a left back for January, then great, fine. It's not going to be transformational, but it will give United an extra option. We'll stop playing Dalot on the left, right? So he can tinker with the players for the next game and the coming games, but I don't think it's going to be radically different.
No.
A radical change, right? That's just going to be what it is. They have to learn the system. They have to perform better.
I think let's not count any chickens either way on that, because this is going to be as optimistic as I can be. You can bring in a basic skilled left-footed defender, identity unknown. We brought in Eriksen for nothing, right? And the exponential improvement that he brought into the midfield as someone who can just create football, create chances, move a ball around, and we got him for nothing. So there's bound to be players out there that you wouldn't think will make such a profound difference. But considering how difficult it has been with Dalot in that system, and it just doesn't work there. Once you have something that works marginally better, it will look like a significant step forward. So that's as positive as I can be. And that doesn't mean that that doesn't equate to me being extra critical with Dalot. It just means that, all right, once you get someone in there who can do the basic things that Amorim wants them to do, I think that we have to be optimistic that those will be those massive stride forwards in the short term, because they just can't do. You can see that that's a side that's struggling to do the basic things, because that's why we're losing embarrassingly in the way that we are losing.
Sure, yeah. And I wish he had more time on the training field. I wish he had more time to do things like work out how to defend set pieces so we don't give away 3 goals all the time. I mean, like, and how to build up with our 3-man defense and 2 in the pivot, and how to move from the middle third into the final third so we're creating consistently good chances. Like, there's no point looking at the chance creation today because obviously half the game was played with 10. So game state and all of that, but consistently not creating good high quality chances, right? There's loads and loads of problems. Square pegs, round holes all over the place. Like now it's fairly obvious that, and we said it actually right from the beginning, that we don't have the wing backs. We don't have the wing backs, and we have a lot of wide forwards that aren't suitable for those sort of inside 10s, the double 10s. He's binned off 2 of them. Like, well, Garnacho's on the bench and Rashford's completely out of the squad 4 games in a row now. Like, bringing him back, like, whatever we think of Marcus as a person and a player, positive, negative, whatever, bringing him back won't be transformational either, right? So, and then he's got a couple of strikers who don't score goals, or nearly enough of them. And so problems all over the place, and no time to coach at all, really, because of the amount of games.
The other thing with Rashford, so very, very quick diversion, is that it's like very much like the Ten Hag, Ronaldo, Sancho thing. It's the big early decision that he's taken with a player. You've got to back. It's mad to me that it's Rashford, but you've got to back the manager, and like it's such a harsh cut. If he brought back Rashford now, it would look very weak. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, unless because of the way he's explained it, and I think he has been smart here, right? Ten Hag couldn't communicate at all. I don't know what his pillow talk's like, but I bet it's dreadful. Whereas Ruben,
yeah, it seems less harsh.
Ruben would make you believe you are the most special person you ever slept with, even though his body count is no doubt extremely high, right? Sorry. My mum watches this, so I should behave myself.
The point is, I get the point actually, because I should have.
The point is, if Rashford came back, he would explain it as Rashford has done the work on the training field, and we've worked on his game. We've done the things we wanted him to do. He would have to come back and perform well and score goals.
I'm not saying that it's that that. There's a divide that's so great that he must be gone in the same way that he was obvious with Sancho and Ronaldo. I don't mean that either. I just mean the stand that he took. But you're quite right. He's fairly soft.
Yeah, I know the internet is generally speaking broken in a way that would say, hey, you're like, bin this guy off. We'll be delighted with it. And most of it is nonsense on Twitter, of course. And the discourse, actually, if you head over to Blue Sky, is very, very different there. I'm not saying like, everyone is bringing out Marcus Rashford banners or anything like that, but there's a little less heat in it, right? Yeah. If they get rid of Rashford now, I wrote 1,500 words and then changed my mind on this, on scenarios for Rashford's departure and what it might look like, right? There is not a good one for United. Right? You think this is good because you don't want this player here anymore. I mean, you generally, the online populace, not you, Wayne Barton, but the best possible scenario is the one that doesn't really exist, which is the Saudis come in and say, yeah, United will give you £60 million, we'll take them off your hands, here's the cash, right? They're not doing that anymore, right? So there isn't a spot at a big European club, really, not really, unless PSG get rid of Randall Kolo Muani. January is not a great time. In fact, after the 1st of July is the best time, which is when the PSR FFP clock resets and people aren't desperate, which means the likelihood is if Ruben and or management really want rid this winter is a loan away in which United pay a substantial portion of his wages. How and in what world does that make us better, right? It doesn't. Everything I hear is that like there may be problems with Rashford's entourage and Ruben Amorim said people are making decisions for Marcus at the moment and not good ones. There may be problems there, but it's not going to make the team or squad better to bin him off for as a lost leader or something like that, right? So the big decision is one he can't really win from. It's a very long way of saying that. There is no scenario except the one that doesn't exist in which he come out of this ahead.
Yeah.
Sucks, but it's true. Sorry, I've been in America too long. Shouldn't use the word suck, right? It's not creeped into British English yet.
Yeah, I understand.
You understand.
So, yeah.
You understand. Yeah.
It
So,
does suck.
wow, that is 50 minutes of ranting. What else has happened this week, Wayne? Anything good? Anything good? Did you have a nice Christmas, by the way? We didn't really talk about that when we talked on Christmas Eve. But
yeah, Santa brought me a signed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer shirt, which was good.
That's very nice.
Memories of better times. Even as Ole as manager, because at least we enjoyed watching the football.
For the most part.
Look, there are. Yeah, it's not been a good week, has it? Like, let's be frank, it's not a good time for United. I just think my biggest, like, I understand, I appreciate that there'd be people watching and listening to this who wouldn't have heard me be as harsh or downcast as I am, or also negative in terms of like my short-term view, because I can't see. I can see, bringing in players and that making a difference. I just can't see how this improves with what we've got. And like I said to you before we came on air, like, I'm a good friend. Well, I say good friend. I know Rob Smythe quite well. He's a good mate. I enjoy talking football with him. Generally one of the more astute observers of United. However, people will always remember the 2006 thing he wrote about Fergie, saying that he was
shredding his legacy at every turn.
You said it. So I would like all my negativity now to be remembered in the same kind of vein, because I'm trying to look for those positive green shoots, and I'll be there against Newcastle with taking my nephew. Like, this is how bad it's got.
That's child abuse, that, Wayne. You start taking your nephew in the last year or so, you've subjected this poor kid to Manchester United.
This is the worst thing, Ed, is that he's got an unbeaten record. He's not seen United lose at Old Trafford, so I'm taking him for that reason. And I haven't taken him to big games purposefully.
Well, it's hard to say what's going to happen now because we've broken the pattern. It was 2 wins, 2 losses, 2 wins, 2 losses. So we're now gone to 3 losses. Are we now going to? Is it going up in steps? We've got exponential growth here. We're now going to get 3 wins in a row.
That means we'll win at Anfield, and if we do
Newcastle, Anfield, Arsenal. Yes, come on, lads.
Then obviously the mood on this podcast will be very, very different, and everything that I've said will be used to mock me, and I will be delighted if that's the case. It's difficult to come on and talk 10 minutes after losing 2-0 to Wolves in that Wolves team. I mean, look, since Wolves were promoted, if anyone wants to watch a terrible game of football, you would guarantee watching Wolves versus Manchester United. The exception to that rule was a Molineux last year, but every other game with them has been utterly dreadful. Tonight was no different, and we've now become dreadful and losing those games, which is, cannot shine any kind of positivity on it at all. It's
really hard.
It is.
All right, look, Newcastle on Sunday. It's going to be a really tough game. They've won a bunch of games in a row. They seem to be, after a difficult start to the season, they seem to be like settling down a bit. I guess the injuries have abated somewhat, and Isak is scoring a lot of goals.
Yeah.
And he's a very fine number 9. He would work very well at United. Obviously, we can't afford him. So let's forget that one. Anthony Gordon scored again today as well. So they got a very... And Tonali's back. And he's kind of interesting one, Tonali, because of the 2 inter midfielders, Barada and Tonali. Barada is just like so much better as a player. But Tonali seems to have settled in quite well to that sort of deeper lying playmaker. And Bruno Guimaraes is a legit excellent footballer, world class, I'd say, or on the verge of being that. He's absolutely everywhere. So they've got a very nice balanced team, I think, and one that is hasn't scored loads of goals this season, but hasn't scored too many stupid ones. This conceded too many stupid ones either. And so set up well to cause United all sorts of problems, I'd say. That's not a super deep analysis of the game. We'll probably do another pod on the short pod to go into more depth. But I see nothing but problems here for United. And that may be that we're talking an hour after this disaster has finished that is clouding my judgment. But also, I think objectively, they are balanced and set up well to cause United quite a lot of problems.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think like your tactical analysis is right of like, Newcastle being able to do that. And I look at Eddie Howe brings teams to Old Trafford. They are horrible to watch. But now they've got that added basis. They've got that added basis of they can create problems. And we saw them in the League Cup last season, battered us at Old Trafford. They could easily do that. My tactical analysis is I'm taking my nephew to the game in the hope that his winning streak can continue. However, that's hope and not expectation. That's the state that we're in. He's like hoping for something. Really, the kind of chaos ball that we're not used you don't want to see this early on in a managerial reign, right? So it's curious to. This is why I'm talking about the players that he's going to choose. Does he bite down on that and say like, that midfield selection is not working, the defense isn't working in that? Because obviously the pensiveness in the goalkeeping and defending with moving the ball is something that should be able to be fixed by the manager. It is indicative of those players hanging on for too long.
One of the warm-ups they do, and this is very, very different from Fergie's time or any other really manager I've seen, is a crowded box, launch the ball into the 6-yard box, warm-up with actual defenders there. There was a time back in the day where Mike Phelan would chuck a ball in and Peter Schmeichel would go catch it, or whatever. Not Schmeichel, but David De Gea would go catch it, and that was the warm-up, and it was all very leisurely and a bit stretching or whatever. Now they actually do something that looks a bit, approaching a training ground routine, like as close to the game state as possible. It still hasn't worked. So they're going to fix that one. There's not a massive radical change he can make. I mean, Bruno's going to get a rest, which is nice. And I do attribute some of his poorer performances to when he gets tired. And sometimes I think managers don't spot it because he wants to go and go and go. And he's obviously the main man when it comes to creation. So there'll be a little bit of change. We are everything but chaos ball. Like, he's going for control, and we get control, but it's kind of passive control, and I'd like to see us have more control in dangerous areas where we're actually creating these high XG chances, high probability of scoring chances, and we don't really do that yet under him. And I'm not sure that changing the personnel will necessarily change that. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know. Like, Manu could probably play quite a few games, still looking extremely rusty. I wouldn't be surprised if he drops out, but he clearly doesn't trust Casemiro and Eriksen. What's the other option in central midfield? Does he change it around and move Ahmad back to right wing back and Mazraoui back into the back three? Possibly. Højlund seems to get dropped after every couple of games, and Xerxes comes in. Wouldn't be surprised if we see that. Doesn't look like a player who's going to score goals to me, but he's got a few this season. So, but that's all just tinkering around the edges. It's not going to change the fundamentals. So, I'm just hoping the details go right. All right. Before we go, a few announcements. I turned on ads, Wayne, and I've had a few complaints. Acast keeps putting them in the wrong place. I'm sorry to do ads. I just feel like we've got a lot of co-hosts on this pod, and I'd like to pay for their time. And that is not really to fill my pocket, but just to make sure everyone gets a little bit to recognize that they, for the most part, actually jobbing people in the world of football, right? So it's fair to pay for their time. If you want to support us another way, you can leave a review on Apple. I don't ask for that very often, but it is useful in order to expand the audience, or you can support us on patreon.com or Apple Podcast subscribers edition as well. Thank you very much, Wayne.
Thank you, Ed.
Sorry to subject you to 2 pods in 3 days of us bitching and moaning about Manchester United. But hey, what are we going to do? We're going to do that until they carry us out in a box, aren't we?
I don't, talking about it is a therapy of trying to get over what we experienced. So it's a communal thing, right? We're all in this together. Everyone listening, we're at least able to sort of like trying to find some sense from it from each other, like trying to like go, it's good to talk to you because I think you give me a different perspective. I think, oh yeah, it's not as bad as I was thinking an hour ago. Fortunately, we've not been able to do that this weekend because I'm still pretty bloody miserable, and I don't think that anyone listening to it will be any less miserable. But that's what happens when you lose 3-0 to Bournemouth and you lose 2-0 to Wolves.
Yeah,
life is bloody tough, no matter who you are in the league.
Very true.
Especially for us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wayne. Bye now.